these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Landon, and it is 5 Fact. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Saturday. And as a punishment to myself, for the first time I've ever failed to do 5 Fact Friday on a Friday, you're getting 7 Fact Saturday. I don't know if you know what that means, where that comes from. That's 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Old story. Never mind. What an immensely big week it has been in housing market news. They rarely get bigger than this week. Right. This is going to be a long one. Let me quickly get through the headlines for you. So, in no particular order, the 7 facts. Zoopla's house price index came out, but got eclipsed by the news that Zoopla itself is being put up for sale. We'll have a quick look at the Zoopla house price index because their yearly house price growth figure is half what all the others are. And that's relevant when we come on to the Financial Times story I'm going to come on to in a minute. So that's fact number 1. Zoopla's up for sale and the house price index is out. Nationwide's house price index also came out in the last week, showing that in March, their average house transaction value came down by 0.6%. Bank of England published its new purchase mortgage approvals. And because all of the headline writers only ever look at seasonally adjusted and not the non-seasonally adjusted, those two stories are completely different. And some people go, oh, our mortgage approvals came down in March, but that was probably because people... No, they didn't. They went up. They went up a lot. Not a single person out there has reported that the non-seasonally adjusted, in other words, the actual mortgage approval figures went up significantly in March. I'll give you the full breakdown on that and what it means. Although those went up, that's fact number 3. Bank of England house purchase mortgage approvals went up, not down, as reported in the media. HMRC reported March transaction volumes, and they were almost 100% up on March last year. They were almost double. Now, seasonally adjusted, they reported was 104%. Actual was 89%. But let's call it almost double. But that's total house transactions in March. But mortgage approvals were only up 10% on the previous year, telling us that almost all of the spike in transactions in March came from cash buyers, not mortgage buyers. Interesting. We'll look into that in a second and what the implications it has for housing transactions. Fact number 5, the Financial Times just this morning has reported the end of house price growth with a couple of very, very big statements in there, which I will read out to you. By the way, links to all of these are below, as ever. If not during the live, then straight afterwards, I will do. Fact number 6. Thanks to the house price trends website, Otta Property, which I will show you, they've got a fantastic breakdown by property type and by region and by borough of house prices from the Land Registry's completion data. And we'll have a look at it. One of the facts in there is that Southwest London detached house prices are now down 33% from their peak in 2022. Now, that's only detached house prices, and that's only in Southwest London, as one example that I've found. But go back, rewind to 2022 when I said house prices will be fall. I expect house prices to fall up to 35%. Well, nobody believed it was possible. And now that there are areas showing that it is actually possible for certain markets for it to happen. And unless you think the worst economic news for the country is behind us, unless you think that, then you can only expect house prices to continue sliding. But Charlie, the national average says that they're going up. No, even at the national average level, it's going down once adjusted for inflation. And this is why the Financial Times is reporting the end of house price growth. And fact number 7, there was a political earthquake yesterday in the council elections where both of the main parties got a massive drubbing by a new party. Now, I am politically neutral. I always have been. I always will be. I will always vote for whichever party has a combination of the best policies and the best people to make the biggest difference to the largest number of people. That's what I always base my vote on. Never on ideology. Never on ideology. Always on which party has best policies and best people that will deliver the biggest improvement in life for the largest number of voters in the country. And that's why I always vote differently. What's happening here, ignoring party politics, is the biggest threat to the two-party system in 100 years. It cannot be overstated. And given that the housing market and the reason that you can't afford a home or can't move home and all of the difficulties you face in the housing market, including housing costs, is down to politics more than any other factor. This is massive news for the housing market. Even though it may not have any immediate impact, it is the biggest news for the housing market. This challenge to the two-party system has the potential to be the biggest news for the housing market and for housing in general and quality and standards of living of anything else that's happened in our lifetimes. So those are the top 7 facts and figures, right? Now, I'm going to go through each one of those in detail. That's taken me 7 minutes to get through the first 7 facts just as a headline. Sorry, I didn't even do my headlines down there. Now, if I have an ideology, it is this. It isn't an ideology. This is a point of view. And by the way, for those of you listening on audio podcast, I'm pointing at my scrappy homemade t-shirt that says "Fix Housing, Fix Everything" that my kids helped me make, because I haven't got round to making a nice, proper printed "Fix Housing, Fix Everything" t-shirt, which I'm going to do. And would you guys buy those if I put "Fix Housing, Fix Everything" t-shirts up for sale on my website? Would you buy those? This is not my ideology. This is my deeply held view after 25, 30 years in the housing industry as a student of politics with a 5-year background in the city, understanding how the economy and politics affect the housing market and how the housing market affects people's quality of life and prospects. You fix housing, you fix everything. My simple goal with Moving Home with Charlie and with the Best Agent website is to make it easier to move home so that more people move home. Another way of saying that is to make more transactions happen. And housing market health has little to do with prices and everything to do with transaction volumes. And very simply, the more transactions there are, the better for everybody, no exceptions. So if we can all get behind one ideology, whatever our politics, whatever our other beliefs in life, the one ideology I would love to get everyone behind is that if you fix the housing market so that people can move home more easily, then you fix a lot of other problems, both social and economic problems. I think my camera's overheating because of the sun. Just a second, guys. Let me see if I can get it in the shade. There we go. So a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that I want a house price crash, because I said 3 years ago, I'm expecting house prices to fall by 35% on average across the country, with varying between 15% and 50%. And I said nominal. And those expectations haven't yet been borne out, but they still remain, broadly speaking, the case, because back then, nobody in the country, not anybody of any housing type, especially detached houses in Southwest London, contemplated the fact that the prices that detached houses in Southwest London were selling in 2022 would be 33% lower in 2025. Nobody contemplated that. And my messaging was to get people to contemplate it. It's happened elsewhere in the country as well. Now, me saying that that's what I expect isn't the same as me wanting that. And me saying I expect house prices to fall 35% peak to trough over however long that takes isn't designed to get clicks and just grow my channel, although it did. It's because that's what I still believe to be the case, because I think the economy has bigger challenges ahead of it than we've already seen in the last couple of years. So what does that tell you is going to keep on happening in the housing market? So I stand for more transactions, easier moving. And that's what the website Best Agent is out to achieve. It's out to achieve housing transactions in an average of 8 weeks, where buyers and sellers began their journey on Best Agent, worked with estate agents from the Best Agent community, and got their move happening much, much faster. I can't influence prices. The market does what the market does, whether you are a buyer or a seller, right? You cannot sell your home for more than the market for your home will pay for it. And as a buyer, you can't buy a home for less than the market will pay for it. Because if someone else will pay more and it's complete, then you aren't going to get what you want. So the market rules. The market determines what happens, nothing else. Now, what the problem that we've got, and the reason the market doesn't function very, very well, and the reason that prices have got overinflated, is because of government intervention in the market. And government intervention in the market is causing falling transaction volumes, rising prices in the past because of stimulus from all the different things they did, like help to buy, very low interest rates, and lending stuff. And we're going to talk about lending because they're talking about more lending happening now, increasing budgets for first-time buyers, and why that helps a few first-time buyers but hurts everybody else. We can't control what the government does. We should be able to, shouldn't we? That's the idea of democracy. The whole idea of democracy is that the people control the government. That's not what's happening at the moment. But there are things that we can control. And starting off by going, the market decides. And if everyone understands that the market decides, whether you're buying or selling or both, you will move home faster. If you think you know what your house is worth, but you've done no research to back it up, or it's what you want for your house, you won't be transacting anytime soon. You're not part of the market. If you are a buyer who thinks you can buy stuff for less than the market is paying, you won't be moving anytime soon either. And you guys are, no offense meant, you guys are time wasters for the market because you clog the market up. Both buyers and sellers with fake expectations or false expectations just create noise, distraction, time wasting, and diversion, and ultimately lead to the most number of fall throughs as well. Okay, because you're not really in the market. You think you are, but you're not. And that's the whole concept of Best Agent, is to get people to understand the market, not your estate agent, not your surveyor, not your mum, not your dad, not your mate who's in the city, not your mate who's an estate agent. The market and nothing else determines what's going to happen to your house price move. Okay, I still haven't started on 7 facts. I need to get into it, don't I? Right. Sorry about the jumpy image. Who have we got here today? Gary Stewart, hi there. Happy Bank Holiday. Allegra 86, Jason Lung. Reet Roams and the Dog Duo, hi there. Gustav Paparoni, please, puns. I can't do the puns. Stop it. You're just distracting me with your very, very good puns. I'm just going to time you out for a bit. Sorry. Who else do we have here? Never mind. Let's get into the first fact. So, fact number 1, Zoopla, the property website that this week put itself up for sale, come on to that in a minute, released its house price index. And I knew something was weird because they haven't been posting on X, which they normally do, both Zoopla and Richard Donnell, the executive director of research there, usually post on X, and they've been very, very quiet for a few weeks. I thought, I wonder what's happening. And then hours after I thought that, they put this up for sale. But their key takeaways from this market are as follows. House price inflation slows, remembering that it was already below inflation anyway. So in other words, real house value shrinkage accelerates. They've said that UK house prices increased 1.6 in the year to March. So let's remember that the others are all saying much bigger numbers than that. Zoopla says a smaller number year on year. Rightmove is even smaller at 1.4% year on year. This is a weird time, right? That's got to be weird. Normally these sites are the ones saying they're 10, 12, huge percent. Why is Zoopla so much lower than the others? Because Zoopla is a uniquely calculated index that's made up from land registry, mortgage lender data, property software data that they have because they own property software, and a bunch of other stuff. And it's all mixed up and it's calculated uniquely. And in my mind, Zoopla is the least inaccurate of all of them and goes to the greatest lengths to provide accuracy. But it is still a national average, which is still useless for all of us. Buyer demand is only 1% higher than last year. That is interesting because Rightmove said it was 4% higher than last year, didn't they? Only 1% higher than last year. And supply of homes is 12% higher than a year ago. Rightmove said, I think, 11%. But there you are. The basic supply and demand metrics of buyers and sellers. There are 12... Supply of homes is growing 12 times faster or 10 times faster than the supply of buyers. Please, sellers, factor this into your equation. There have been the highest number of homes for sale for some time now, the highest number of homes for sale for 10 years. And that's been the case for some time, and that's increasing. Sales agreed is 6% higher than last year. That's welcome, but nowhere near what it could and should be. Relaxation of stress testing of mortgage affordability by lenders could boost buying power 15 to 20%. Now, this is further evidence for those of you who think that, house prices are just supply and demand. No, it's supply of finance and supply of houses. Okay? It's weird. It's not like any other market. It's supply of finance and the cost of that finance and how restrictive that finance is. If suddenly first-time buyers can borrow 20% more than they could before, what's that going to do to house prices? It's going to move them up at the first-time buyer level, even though there are no more buyers. So don't think it's just supply and demand. UK house price inflation predicted to slow towards 1 to 1.5% in the coming months. So they're saying that that's yearly house price growth to slow towards 1%. Whilst inflation remains at 2.7, is it, CPI, and 3.5 CPIH. In other words, at the national average level, which is silly because Scotland and Northern Ireland are going up while England and Wales are going down, house values are shrinking. Cut out Scotland and Northern Ireland, just look at England and Wales, house values are shrinking faster than that. If you remove the Scotland and Northern Ireland from these numbers would be negative already for England and Wales. Now, they go into more detail there, and I recommend you go and have a look. Look at your house price, your house type, because they've broken it down by property type there as well. Okay. Now, this is not enough time to go into this in detail. So we're going to go on to the next point. Just quickly, here we are. City AM. Rightmove rival handed £500 million price tag. So there's still a lot of detail lacking from this because Zoopla owns a lot of other things like Uswitch and estate agency CRM systems and like a housing market data company. And it's not being very clear exactly what's up for sale, and they won't tell the media or me. I actually contacted someone there and said, hey, what's going on? What can you tell me? And they replied, I hope you're well, Charlie, but no comment, I'm afraid. But this is a really, really big deal. It's been the second biggest property site for 20 years. And this is a sign of the times, and it's a sign of what's happening. And it's a sign of expectations getting worse in the housing market instead of housing health, transaction volumes, and that kind of stuff. Okay. There are a lot of analysts at Zoopla, and they'll be taking a very careful look. It's owned by an American private equity firm called Silver Lake, and they won't be selling this because they think the housing market's going to be okay in the UK. All right. Anyway, that's fact number one, Zoopla. Fact number two, very quickly, nationwide, annual house price growth slows and house prices down 0.6% month on month. I don't read much into this. People go, "Oh, Charlie, you always say the house price indices are." I don't read anything into this. It's not accurate. I'm just saying it's interesting that that's what their data is telling them this month. It's a tiny portion of the market. It is mortgage properties only. And remember, in March, as I will show you in a minute with the bank stats, the vast majority of transactions in March were cash, not mortgage. And this is Nationwide's own book. It's only the mortgages that they lent. Okay, so this is a very, very small sample of the market and isn't indicative of the whole market as a whole. But nevertheless, it's worth watching because it gets reported. So that's fact number two. Fact number three, Bank of England mortgage new purchase approvals. Okay, let me just recap something for everybody. Let me recap the difference between seasonally adjusted and non-seasonally adjusted. Let me just hide my logo there for a minute. So what you can see here on the screen, I hope, is the seasonally adjusted total mortgages, including remortgages for the last since the beginning of last year, so about 15 months. That's seasonally adjusted, and this is the same thing, not seasonally adjusted. Seasonally adjusted, not seasonally adjusted. And whilst seasonally adjusted has a value and a purpose and is worthwhile being aware of, when you're trying to tell what's happening recently, like what happened this month compared to last month and what's different, you need to look, and I'm speaking here to all of the journalists that just headline seasonally adjusted headline and think that that's what's happening when it's not. Because when you report what happened in March, it isn't what happened in March if it's seasonally adjusted. You have to show the non-seasonally adjusted numbers to report what happened in March. So this is not seasonally adjusted, and that's again for all house purchases and remortgages and other lending secured on dwellings. But let's get to new purchases only. And again, here is the completely useless seasonally adjusted figure that says what happened is that in February, there were 65,000 mortgage approvals for new purchases, and in March, there were 64,300, or a reduction of about 1%. That information is of no value to anyone because it's not true. Look at the seasonally adjusted figure, and it's completely different. Actually, February wasn't what they said it was. It was down at 61,000, and March is at 70,000. Right? This is not seasonally adjusted down there. You can see it. Not seasonally adjusted. 70,000. Not the 60,000 reported. Okay? This is saying that there are more mortgages than being reported. Now, the number they're saying here is 70,000. I'll just check the layout here. Can you see that? Okay. Right? 70,000 in the 31st of March 2025, 70,000 approvals for house purchase to individuals not seasonally adjusted, 70,000. A year ago, to put it into context, because the relevance of this is that March was the last month before the stamp duty deadline hit. And so we expected a big spike. Well, that spike is not as big as I expected. What was it a year ago? 63,000. So it's only March this year, the month before the stamp duty deadline, was only 10% higher than March last year. That, to me, is surprisingly low, especially when you look at the fact, as we're going to now, of what happened in a house price transaction. So remember that number, okay? Remember that number, 70,000 mortgage approvals in March. This is Bank of England, right? It's actual data. To my knowledge, this data is considered pinpoint accurate from the Bank of England because every single mortgage has to be reported to the Bank of England. So as far as I know, that is numerically perfect. 70,000. The next thing I'm about to show you is also numerically perfect because it's HMRC's stamp duty transactions figures. All right. UK monthly property transactions commentary. Now, I have a frustrating beef with this because this is proof that the government possesses 100% accurate house price data from just last month. It doesn't publish it. And it claims that the reason it doesn't publish it is for privacy reasons. I reject that as a valid reason for not publishing house price data that was last month, because you don't need to publish anything that compromises privacy. You just publish, even if you just publish the raw averages, you don't have to assign it to individual properties at this point. Leave that for the land registry. But you can publish the transaction prices so that they can be cross-checked with property types, unique property reference numbers, all kinds of stuff. That information would shine the spotlight of transparency into the housing market and unlock transactions very quickly for a large number of reasons. Now, let's look at the actual numbers. Remember on the previous screen, 70,000 transactions with a mortgage in March. And again, let's look at the non-seasonally adjusted, right? For the actual, it's 89% higher than March last year. 164,000 transactions. 70,000 of those were with mortgages and 165,000 were total. So we've got 95,000 cash transactions. Last March, the number was 85,000. So it's a wild spike. And here again, look, 80% higher than February. So just month on month, it was 80% higher than February. Okay. And the number of transactions. So this tells us that most of the people who rushed to beat the stamp duty deadline were cash buyers. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Because if you're borrowing a mortgage, using a mortgage to buy a house, the stamp duty, it's a larger proportion of your deposit. But because you're not investing 100% of your own cash into the purchase, you're leveraging to do it. It's actually, for people who are buying cash, it's a significantly different equation. And that's why, and it's especially with landlords, because the stamp duty for landlords went up painfully on the 1st of April. All right, so there we go. Transaction volumes were really, really high, like spikily, weirdly high. I think it's the third highest number on record of transactions in 1 month. And the last ones are also thanks to stamp duty deadlines. Government, that's 3 times now. Don't do stamp duty deadlines. Just scrap stamp duty permanently, and that will boost transactions massively. There we are. Non-seasonally adjusted transactions increased 80% in March 2025 relative to February, so just the month before. This is the third highest month-on-month increase since records began for non-season adjusted figures, behind only March 2016 and June 2021, which is during the pandemic. Right. The next one, the Financial Times story that came out just this morning. Is UK house price growth a thing of the past? This article corroborates and vindicates and validates everything I've been saying for the last 2 years. So to all of you, and I know it's the minority of you, but to all of you who were watching me 2-3 years ago laughing, I blow a raspberry at you, sir, madam, whoever. Okay? I don't have an agenda other than to help people move house more easily. If people know what's happening in the housing market, they can move more easily. The housing market doesn't tell the public what's happening in the housing market. So when I come out and start saying what's actually happening in the housing market, and it conflicts with what the housing market is saying, I'm going to get attacked. That's what happened. This article vindicates it. Now, I want to go through this in a little bit of detail because it's really important to those of you making financial decisions with your house buying. Let's just get into this. It's really important. Okay. Is house price growth a thing of the past? Property is not going to be the money spinner it once was. Anyone out there thinking of starting a journey in property investment, thinking that it's going to be a money spinner, isn't paying attention if they don't look at this stuff and listen. Let me just skip through all of the rambling to the important parts. Each property downturn has seen the average trend in long-term nominal price growth shift to a lower level. All right. Long-term house price growth shift lower, and successive generations have been finding it more difficult to buy, contributing to a similar trend with homeowners moving less frequently. Bad and bad. As we emerge from the most recent housing downturn, no, we're not emerging yet, I don't think, where the long-term trend in nominal house price growth is at its lowest level in at least 50 years, and this is nominal, right? And real price growth has dropped to zero. What can we expect from house prices in the future, and should younger households place all their chips on the bet that house prices will forever go up? Obviously not. Now, let me just skip to a graph I want you to understand. Here's another warning. If you're a buyer thinking about stretching yourself to make a purchase, perhaps with a long-term mortgage term, on the basis that you think you'll be able to trade up in a few years, you need to think about whether there is still the potential for growth. Pay attention. Now, listen, for those of you saying, hang on, Charlie, the link below is to the Financial Times website, and that is it's behind a paywall. Yes, it is. But you can register for free and read this article for free without any credit card details, and I urge you to do so. Yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Fundamentals of supply and demand, etc., people in the country, blah, blah, blah. But let's get down to here. So this is a graph of long-term growth trends in house prices. So this is the average annual change over a 20-year period. The average change in house prices over a 20-year period, tracked back to the 1970s. And you can see that it peaked in the 1990s, although even real inflation was only about 5%. The blue line is nominal prices. In other words, the number, the sticker price, the actual numbers on the for sale, but it's not the value because the value gets reduced by inflation. The real value is the pink line below it. And down at the bottom, you can see that's zero on the left-hand axis. And what you'll see is that in the late 90s, it got close to zero, but still stayed above zero. But here we are in 2025, and it has reached zero. And this is slightly lagged data, and it will continue, in my opinion, to stay at zero or go lower. So for those of you, I want you to look at this graph. For all those of you who believe that house prices double every 10 years, look at this graph. And understand that you have been brainwashed if you believe house prices double every 10 years, right? That graph is crystal clear. That's actual house price growth over long term, because I'm talking about the long termers, not the house price crash, yes or no. The people who go, oh, but John, in the long term, in the long term, in the long term. Well, look at that. In the long term, over 20 years, real house price growth is 0. Let that sink in, please. Over the last 20 years, adjusted for inflation, house price growth is 0. And I started talking about this 3 years ago when it was still only 2% and told it was all going down. And yes, nominal prices haven't got down as far as I've said they're going to, but because we haven't reached the bottom yet. I said over as long as it takes. People said, how long is that? I said, well, I think 3 years. It's going to take longer than 3 years. It's a slide, not a crash, as I have always been saying. A slide, not a crash, which is a good thing. I don't want a house price crash because house price crashes only benefit first-time buyers. It doesn't benefit anyone or anything else. Okay? And what it does do, it causes a lot of pain when they happen. And what I said 3 years ago, I wish I could find the video, was that the ideal scenario is for real house price growth to go to 0. And therefore affordability will improve, which it has been. And therefore gradually houses will become more affordable without anyone getting hurt with negative equity in the process. Now, there are people getting hurt with negative equity because there are places, as I'm about to show you, where house prices have fallen 33% in the last 3 years. And that's land registry data I'm about to show you on the Otta Property website. Do we have any questions here? Is Charlie's t-shirt words written in blood? That's a great question. No. I would, though. I would. That's how committed I am to this cause. That's a very, very good question, senior stranger. I will answer that at the end of this, right? If buyers thinking they can buy cheaper than current advertised prices, no, I didn't say advertised prices, did I? I didn't say below advertised. I said below market prices. Market prices are the prices they actually sell at, not the prices they're listed at. So perhaps I should have been clearer with my terminology, right? The market is where houses actually sell. If they don't actually sell, you didn't get into the market. You were on the outline to the market, okay? So don't get confused between asking prices, which aren't the market and never have been. So be out looking, because you will find, if you're not out looking, you won't find that one property that's just right for you, where the sellers are sick of being on the market for a long time and they're willing to accept a lower offer, right? Where it's a time waste is when there are lots of buyers interested, the price has been set reasonably by the agent and the seller, and you come and go, well, I'm going to offer 10% below. That's just silly. You just haven't done your research and you haven't actually listened to me if that's what you're doing. Because I've never said go and offer X% below all asking prices. I always said it depends on the property and whether it was listed correctly or not. Right. On to the next one. This is really good, the next bit, right? I'm just checking for any more. Lee Marsden says, can you explain season adjusted? Basically, they iron out the peaks and the troughs to make it a less sensitive number so that the year-on-year growth figure is more reliable. That's why they do seasonally adjusted, because otherwise short-term factors can have exacerbated effects on month-to-month things. Like, for example, stamp duty coming to an end. But when the stamp duty comes to an end and you want to see the effect of that, seasonally adjusted irons out the effect of that. That's why they do it. Patasi Paul, SJ, hi there. Right, next one. This is really interesting. So I did a post on X yesterday, posting a screenshot from the Otta Property website. And what it does is it allows you for any given borough or county, I'm not sure, to look at prices going back to January 2020 and break it down by house price. By property type. Okay. And then they've got into a bit of a debate in the comments about exactly what's confusing, what's not, what's happening, what's not. And here we are. Look, this is an interesting one. The detached price. This is in Carlisle. I'm not going to go to the website because it points out. This website points out what I've been trying to say to everyone from the word go. And whilst I think that James, who runs his website, has done a fantastic job with it, and I think I'm right in saying he mostly uses machine learning and AI to produce this website. It's becoming really useful to illustrate what the housing market looks like at a national picture level. So on this screenshot here, if you look at the map over on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see blue colors and red colors in varying shades of difference, right? Blue is where, and the darker blue is the higher the price growth, and the darker red is the higher the price drop. And what you can see there is that for that particular property type, which I think is detached property types, that shows you the different parts of the country where detached prices have been going up or detached prices have been going down. And you can clearly see a bit of a north-south, generalized north-south difference, but it's not totally north-south, okay? There are errors. Let's get into it. Let's get this nice and big on the screen so you guys can make the most of it. So what we've got here, this is, and by the way, this is using data from the land registry, right? It's publicly available price paid data from the land registry. So although it's got March 25 down here, that's actually reporting, that's the most recently reported, the volumes are low, and it is slightly lagged. It's not what prices completed in March, it's what they reported in March, which is from a few months earlier. So there is a little bit of a lag to this. But when you look at this map, you can see that talking about national house prices is pointless. Look at what happens if I change this to terrace houses. Look at the map. Watch the map change color when I change from detached houses to terraced houses. Here I go. 3, 2, 1, click. See that? Terraced houses, detached houses. Terraced houses, detached houses. So on the left is the whole country. On the right is the graph for just London Southwest. And what, I don't know if you can see that there, but it says the change from peak to now is minus 33.6%. That is on land registry price paid data. And what these graphs are, because I recommend you guys go and check it out. This is an amazing site. There's a lot of work being done here. And he's doing it for free. It's really interesting. So the blue lines are the raw average of the price paid in that month for that property type. So this, we're looking at, let's say that highest month there, right? That blue line there was May 2021. Hang on a second. Why can't I get that black? Get in there. Here we are. June 2021. It was so it was at 3.2 million was the actual number. It was 1.9 million as an average, smoothed to 2.3 million, right? So these are detached houses in Southwest London, hence these very high prices. And on the right-hand menu, on the right-hand axis, you've got monthly sample size. So that's how many actually happened. And these are quite small volumes here, right? So the blue line is the volume. Sorry, the blue line is the volume of transactions. That's how many changed hands. Okay. But these are tens of properties per month, not large numbers, but it is all of them, right? Because it's land registry. Detached prices in Southwest London are now 33.6% lower than their peak. And the peak was January 2022, we now know. And February 2022 was when I put out the first video saying, I think we've hit the peak. And that data wasn't available then. Now, let's just go back. Ignore London, right? So let's have a look at flats. So flats, that's the flat outlook on the... It's amazing, isn't it? For different flats, different property types, look at the different maps around the country. Detached houses, semi-detached houses, terraced houses, flats. Fascinating. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've just got London Southwest. Now, do you want... Let's just, for fun... Who wants to give me to pick another area of the country and I'll try it out live here? Somebody give me another county or postcode area. It's postcode area it's done by. A postcode area, and I'll see what I can find. First person to give me a postcode area. I know there's a bit of a delay, but come on, someone give me an area. Otherwise, I'm going to pick one random myself. I'm going to pick Ipswich, IP. So flats in Ipswich are down 14% from the peak of July 2022. Note that, again, different property markets, in other words, flats in Ipswich are a different market to houses in Southwest London, right? And they peaked at a different time. They peaked 7 months later. They're down 14% in Ipswich. Terraced houses are down 5% in Ipswich from the peak of September 2022. Yet again, a different timing for the peak. Semi-detached houses are down 4% from the peak, not very much, but the peak was August 2022. Detached houses are down 5.8% from the peak, but that peak, weirdly, was later than all the others. It was March 2023. Do we have anyone? Do we have any? Oh, here we are. God, there's obviously a real delay on the live chat for some reason. Sorry. I need just a postcode, just the first part of a postcode. I'm going to pick. All right, let's have a look at Manchester. Let's have a look at Manchester. Manchester detached houses. This is land registry data, okay? Down 1.4% from the August 2024 peak. So it peaked actually last year. Can you see? Every market is different. And that's why the only reason, the Financial Times article says this, the only reason they publish house price data every month nationally is for PR. The national average doesn't correlate with any of this. Detached houses in Manchester are down 1.4% from the peak of August last year. Semi-detached are the same as the peak, which was March 2020. So semi-detached houses in Manchester are actually at their peak now. And they're 5.2% higher than a year ago. Semis in Manchester are... This kind of makes sense, right? Because people are moving up to Manchester from London. Terraced houses, okay, they're 0.2% down from January this year, but otherwise they're close to their peak, and they're 4.5% up on last year. And flats, okay, Manchester flats is a very, very different story. They are 13% down on their peak, and the peak for flat prices in Manchester was 2021, December 2021. Right, January 2022. So around about the same time as detached houses peaked in London, flats peaked in Manchester. It just makes no sense to generalize the whole country what house prices are doing. And if anyone ever says, oh, house prices are going up or house prices are going down, either way, they are talking patent rubbish. You cannot generalize like that. You can say that the country's housing stock as a whole, that's a different thing, but that's not house prices. That's different. Isn't that fascinating? And then Manchester all. Okay, so Manchester is 4.8% as a whole across all property types, up on 12 months ago. And prices peaked. Prices are at their peak now in Manchester. So DL Darlington, 12% up on a year ago, all property prices. Let's break it down. Flats in Darlington are 11% down from the peak of 2020, another completely different time to peak. January 2020, Darlington flats peaked, and they're down 11% from that, but they're 5% up on last year. Terraced houses in Darlington, they're close to their peak now, 13% up on a year ago. Semi-detached houses, close to their peak now in Darlington, 5.8% up on a year ago. So Darlington is its own market. I mean, every single one. And detached houses, 4.5% down from the peak, 0.5% down from a year ago. All right, I think I've made guys, the link is below to Otta Property if you want to go and check it out for yourself. I really recommend you do. I really, really recommend you do. It's slightly lagged. It's not telling you what's happening today. But what's really valuable about it is it's based on cold, hard, raw data from the Land Registry's price paid data set. It's broken down by property type, and it's broken down by region, and it illustrates very, very clearly that every single housing market for every single different property type is a different market in every different part of the country, right? So important. Right, guys, I've been going nearly an hour. There are more questions there, but I'm going to have to come back to them if I have time. I want to go on to the final point. Fact number 7. The election results and what they mean for the housing market. What they mean for the housing market is significant political turmoil between now and the next election. Politics or government policy has a bigger impact on the housing market than anything else. Other things have an impact too, but nothing has a bigger impact than government policy. And if we are looking at a change to the two-party system that's been in place for 100 years, since Labour wiped out the Liberal Democrats, I don't know what that means other than political uncertainty. It probably means that a lot of the changes that this government was hoping to get into place before the next election are now less likely. Probably. That's not a prediction. That's my guess at the moment. Because what's going to happen is, as the Labour Party and the Conservative Party come to terms with the fact that the country's had enough of them both, just had enough of them both, they're going to go into internal meltdown and leadership changes, whatever might happen. I don't know. And by the way, guys, as far as I'm concerned, the Liberal Democrats, even though I voted for the Liberal Democrats the last election, I mean, I really had to hold my nose. I voted for them based on their housing manifesto. They are part of the same problem. The Liberal Democrats are part of the same establishment as the Tories and the Labour government, in my opinion. And if the Liberal Democrats rise on the back of this, which they did do, they've increased the number of seats in that election. That's just going out of the frying pan into the fire, I think. A lot of people think I'm pro-reform. I am pro-disruption to the status quo. I would not advocate voting for any party that doesn't have A, policies that benefit the largest number of people, and B, a team of people with the credibility to actually deliver. Reform don't yet have either of those two things, but I mean, some people might argue they've got great policies. They don't yet have an electable government. If Reform gets an electable shadow cabinet in place before the next election, which is very, very difficult because they don't have, they're not going to be getting many more seats. They might win some more by-elections. They might end up being the least bad option. Again, looking from a non-ideological point of view, just who's going to do the best job of unstuffing the country? Who's going to do the best job of just allowing people to go about their business, go to work, earn a living, have a home, have a decent life? That's who I vote for. And what's happened in these elections is unprecedented. Look at the Conservatives, absolutely destroyed, followed by Labour also being pretty badly wiped out. But the Conservatives are the ones who came off worse than this, but they're not in government. This doesn't affect them very much. So I'm interested in what happens to the system of governance, because it is the system of governance that's put us in the position that we're in now. And I watch this with interest because it's the first time I've seen the potential for the system of governance to change. Now, of course, that could be for better or for worse. We'll have to wait and see. But on that basis, yes, good stuff. Paparoni says, watch ITV, Channel 4 or BBC and you still get Ofcom. That is true. That is true. And Ofcom is no longer fit for purpose, I'm afraid, in my view, objectively speaking. Yeah, some people say Reform will be no different. They're all the same. You might be right. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It's too early to know. But what this does do is this is a political earthquake in terms of what it means for the uncertainty levels for the next election. Do we have any more last-minute questions? Guys, the links, if you're watching this on YouTube, look in the description below the video on YouTube and you'll find the links to everything I've showed in this video. Okay? And the Otta Property link, just look up Otta Property. Otta Property /home. I think doing this video has crashed his site. I'm sorry to say. I think there's already so many of you using it. It's just a small privately built site. So check it out when you can. And James, if you're watching this, apologies for crashing your website. But it's for good reasons, hopefully. Now, for those of you asking me questions about, hey, I've got this price on this property, what good deal? I'm flattered that you think I'm that clever to be able to tell you whether or not something that I can't see, a house I can't see, is a good deal based just on price. It's not just to do with the price, and I would even need to know the area, freehold or leasehold, all those kinds of things. And it's not about whether it's a good deal; it's about whether it suits your circumstances, right? Because a good deal for one person isn't a good deal for the next person. This is what makes this market so unlike any other marketplace. But guys, I've got to go. Have a fantastic bank holiday weekend. I would like to just finish off with one last message for anyone thinking about being a landlord for the first time. What I call amateur landlord. Someone thinking, oh, maybe we could be a landlord. Maybe we'll move out of home and rent out our home. Please make sure before you decide to be a landlord that you understand the most basic facts, situations, and risks surrounding it. Because I am aware of multiple first-time landlords who simply can't believe that their tenants are in a position where they don't want to move out and they're going to sit tight, and the law allows them to do that. They can't pay their rent, but they're still going to sit tight because the law allows them to do that because there's a massive court backlog. And some of these landlords are like, what? Huh? Can that happen? And I find myself thinking, you mean you didn't check before you became a landlord that this could happen? Or did you just not think it would happen to you? Did you not check the court backlog numbers for evictions? Have you not seen the news headlines about the massive delay? Have you not seen the news talking about Section 21 evictions being banned, but the problem with that being that there's already an unmanageable backlog of those? Have you not paid any attention before deciding to rent out a valuable asset to people, to total strangers? Honestly, it really is nobody else's fault if you find yourself in that situation as a landlord when you didn't bother to just even do the most basic risk checks of what you were going into. Have a great weekend, guys. See you in the next one. And if you want to find me and you want any help from me, and thanks to those of you who've been booking videos, one-to-one videos with me, booking into next week now. If you want to find me, it's mhwc.co.uk. And I'm going to leave that on. There we are. If you're new here, look for Charlie's 10 golden rules for home buyers and Charlie's 10 golden rules for home sellers. Just search it and you'll find those videos. Start there. Otherwise, if you're a seller, remember, don't overprice because you won't sell. And if you're a buyer, don't overpay because you might get yourself into a problem that you can't get out of. Have a great weekend.